So on the door is all this graffiti that you could tell came from a kid in crayon. And one of the graffiti said, "I love my family." And family was spelled F-A-M-I-L-E. And I just love that they let their kids write on the door and that's what the kids wanted to write. And this guy answers the door. And I introduced myself, "Hey, I'm Beto O'Rourke. Is this your house?" And he said, "No, I actually am staying with some friends right now. In fact, I'm living in a trailer right next to this house. It's a long story. You probably don't want to hear it." And I said, "No, that's what I'm here for. I wanted to meet you, want to find out what's on your mind, want to know who you are. Tell me your story." So he says, "I just moved down here from Omaha. I had a wonderful job. I was making $16.50 an hour. I was the maintenance guy, in fact, the only maintenance guy for a 4-story hotel. I did everything. I cleaned the pool, I treated the water, I repaired everything that was broken." But he said, earlier this year, I started not to feel well. Something was wrong with me. And I knew that I needed to get help, but I couldn't get any time off from work. I was the only maintenance guy, and they wouldn't let me off. Then the blizzard hits in February, and I'm really not feeling well. And I asked if I can go see a doctor, and they said, "We just can't spare you right now." And he says, "I was coughing up blood. I knew something was wrong." He finally goes to a doctor because he quits on that day that they won't let him leave during the blizzard, and he's just feeling like hell, and he just cannot do it anymore. And he says, "If you can't give me time off, then I just got to go on my own." Discovers that he has pancreatic cancer. Does not have insurance, so he's being paid $16.50, had enough for a 2-room apartment. One of those rooms he uses to create art, some of which he showed us. He brought out examples on the front porch, but earned too much to qualify for Medicaid, did not earn enough to be able to afford private insurance, and now has pancreatic cancer, moves to Iowa to see if he can enroll in Medicaid in this state. And I said, "Well, what are you doing while you're here?" And he said, "Well, I can't work, because if I work, I won't qualify in Iowa as well, and I'm also dependent on the Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program, food stamps or SNAP. So I'm just making art, and I'm helping to take care of these kids right now." And as we're having the conversation, he is becoming visibly frustrated, to the point that he starts to cry. Not tears of pain, not because he's physically hurting at that moment. He's just so frustrated. And he said, "How did this happen in this country? I did everything I was supposed to do. Worked my tail off in that job, paid my rent on a regular basis, always tried to take care of myself. And now that I'm sick and I really need help, I'm on my own." He said, "This is the wealthiest, the most powerful country on the face of the planet. We've got some really smart people here. How come I'm in this position right now, and what are you going to do about it?" And then before I could answer, he says, "One more thing I got to tell you." He said, "Look, I'm from the old school." He said, "I'm about 60 years old. And I've always believed whatever your party, whoever you voted for, when that person becomes president, you respect and you support them, even if you disagree with them." He said, "Look, that's what I've always believed and what I've always tried to do. But there's a guy in office right now," and he asked me, "Did you see him the other night? He wants to take us back to another generation, maybe to another century. He wants to build a wall that'll cost us $30 billion instead of investing in healthcare so that I can be well enough and go back to work, because I do not want a handout. I just want to be helped so I'm well enough to live to my full potential." This guy was asking questions that make so much sense, the answers to which are so obvious. Imagine if we decided as a country that we were going to guarantee that every single American could see a doctor or afford their prescriptions or see a mental health care specialist instead of getting arrested on purpose for their schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or clinical depression. What if every woman could make her own decisions about her own body and got access to the care that made that possible? Universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care, not dependent on your job. Take the time off because we have universal paid family and medical leave so that you can get better and then get back to your job and be right back on track. That's all that guy is asking for. And to those who might question, "Beto, that sounds really expensive. to make sure that everyone gets care. It may be, but it's a hell of a lot less expensive than the way that we pay for care today or fail to pay for care today in this country. So tell me, are you with me? Should we be able to help this guy out? Universal, guaranteed, high quality health care for every American? And to his point, here we are, hundreds, maybe close to 2,000 miles from where I'm from in El Paso, Texas. And go El Paso, Texas, yes. The two of you who clapped know exactly what I'm talking about. This beautiful community in the Rocky Mountains, in the Chihuahuan Desert, connected to Ciudad Juarez, forming the largest binational city in the Western Hemisphere. One of the safest places in America today. Safe, not despite, but because it's a city of immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers. This guy's asking, and it's hard to argue with, why are we going to build a wall, a solution in search of a problem? Why would we put kids in cages, deport their parents, separate those families, visit that kind of cruelty and torture on them? How expensive and how it will forever stain the conscience and the memory of this country. Right now, in El Paso, Texas, in fact, just outside in a small town called Clint, there is a Border Patrol station where we have kept, at this point, thousands of kids who've been, in some cases, separated from their parents, who are sleeping on concrete floors under aluminum blankets, knowing not when or if they're ever going to see their folks again. You and I full well know that those kids pose no danger or threat to this country. They're not going to come and get any of us. They're not going to take anything from us. They're doing what any human being would do in the same position. If you were trying to flee the deadliest country on the face of the planet, or you were undergoing an historic drought, the likes of which your country had never seen, and you could not feed yourself or take care of your kids, only then would you entertain the idea of embarking upon a 2,000-mile journey, the length of Mexico, some of it on foot, some of it atop a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, to come to this country, a country comprised of asylum seekers and refugees and immigrants the world over, the very presence of whom makes us stronger and more successful and safer and more secure. We don't need a wall. We don't need cages. We need to rewrite our immigration laws in our own image and follow our values. Live up to the best traditions of this country. Or how about this? This great economy, greatest in the history of the world, working so well, but for far too few right now. What if we brought everyone in? What if there was a minimum wage in this country that was a living wage, $15 as the floor? What if there was paid time off for every American? What if in 2019 we decide we're going to pay women equal to what men make, so this economy is really humming? What if we were to roll back the worst of these Trump tax cuts, $2 trillion that went to the very wealthiest at a time of wealth inequality, that went to corporations and they're sitting on record piles of cash, and made sure that that tax code worked for all of us, and that we make investments in people, in their neighborhoods, in their health care, and I mean this for all the public school educators in the room, in those teachers and educators in the classroom, on the school bus, in the cafeteria, in the library. Guarantee the right to organize, to use the leverage of the value that you provide in that public school, to demand better wages and better working conditions, to deliver better instruction to those kids, to unlock the lifelong love of learning inherent within every single child, to begin education not universally at 4 or 5 years old in kindergarten, but 3 or 4 years old in pre-K. Make sure that we can afford a college education, and forgive the debt of those who've taken on student loans if they're willing to commit to teaching or education or working at a VA to deliver care for one of those veterans who put their lives on the line for this country. That's when this works. Y por último, finally, this is something that I've heard as I've traveled and listened to people in Iowa. Unlike the president, you all believe in science and the facts and the truth. You know that the flooding that we saw along the Missouri was preceded by the greatest runoff into the Missouri River Basin in the history of the Missouri River Basin. You know the same thing is happening along the Mississippi. And these floods that you're seeing here in this state, the fires that we witnessed in California, 58 inches of rain that fell on Houston, Texas, the landfall record in North America, not caused by God, nor by Mother Nature, but by you and by me and all of us, our excesses, our emissions, our inaction in the face of the facts and the science. Farmers whose fields are underwater, following debt that has put them financially underwater, following a trade war and tariffs that have cut out the markets right from below them, markets that they spent a lifetime opening up. It's those same farmers, as JD just said, who have come to us and said, I want to do my part in making sure that we confront this challenge before it is too late. Just pay me a profit to perform the environmental services, to plant cover crops and capture more carbon out of the air, to conserve more of this land, and to be paid to be able to do that, to make sure that we're protecting our waterways, our air, and our soil. Put farmers in the driver's seat, and I guarantee you, we will not only feed ourselves, we will save this planet. Every single one of us doing all that we can to make sure that we're up to the greatest test we have ever seen. And that's why I'm running. I believe, though we have these challenges right now, though that man that I met today in Council Bluffs is going through a world of hurt at this moment, I believe in him, I believe in us, I believe in this country. I know that our best days are still ahead. I know that we can transcend this division and the differences that might otherwise define us, to make sure that we are instead known by our ambitions, the work, the resolve, the creativity, the ingenuity that we'll bring to bear to ensure that we face these challenges and overcome them. And I'm grateful to be doing this with you. Thank you all for having us out here. You want to take questions? All right. If you've got a question or a comment, Cynthia's got a microphone and she will bring it to you. We'll bring you into the conversation.
Hi, my name is Sawyer Van Horn, and what do you plan to do about homelessness? I know that's a big issue. About what? Homelessness.
Yes.
I know that's a big issue. People say, oh yeah, it's handled. I see, I live out in Sioux Falls, and I see people on the streets all the time, and I'm just wondering what you are going to do about that.
Question is about homelessness. And I got to tell you, I think all of this stuff is connected. That gentleman that I was telling you about at the outset of my remarks, he said, I'm just days away from being homeless myself, without being able to afford health care, without having a job right now, living in a trailer right next to a family friend's house. It's just a matter of time unless we help them out. So some of those things we were talking about, a living wage, universal health care, the ability to take time off of work, and then making sure the federal government invests in housing. Community development block grants right here in Sioux City that you leverage to bring in private development dollars and build more housing and make sure that it's affordable, and then guarantee that it is not part of gentrification. We do not squander the opportunity to make sure that everyone can live together, guarantee that people can live closer to where they work, so you're not traveling an hour or two just to get to that job because you're priced out of that housing market. So let's make federal housing dollars contingent on local leadership, inclusionary zoning, and making sure that everybody's got a roof over their heads. Thanks for asking the question.
Hi, my name is Don Dew. I'm a director at Disability Resource Center here, and I do national disability work. People with disabilities are the largest minority that will be the electorate in this next election. They are looking for engagement and excitement from candidates. And one of the main things is the Disability Integration Act. And they're looking for candidates to say whether they will, if the Disability Integration Act does not come to the floor by 2020, that they would do a executive action.
So thank you for the question. And And so, yes, on two different sides of this. One, let's stop the bad stuff that's going on right now. And you probably know there are efforts and some small successes in rolling back the Americans with Disabilities Act that move the onus from the business owner to accommodate that American with disabilities to the American with disabilities to try to bring suit against them, not the way that it's supposed to work. If we really want this country and this economy to thrive, everyone's got to be able to participate. And then the other side of that is proposing and signing into law legislation like you described that ensures that not only will no one be discriminated against in this country, but that we move every mountain to bring every single person in to our economy, to our democracy, to civic engagement, just like we're doing here right now. So we'd love to have your help to make sure that we organize around that, not only propose the right things, but build the political will to get them across the line once we're in office. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hey, we're going to do a few more. Hey, Beto, very excited to be here. Drove 4.5 hours from Topeka, Kansas. So excited. One thing I wanted to ask you is about the maternal and infant mortality rate in women of color. It's a very serious crisis, and I got to witness that firsthand with my 17-year-old niece who is a woman of color, and to see the treatment she received versus the treatment I received as a white woman was heartbreaking. It was so unfair, and I'm also a birth photographer, so I've been a part of a lot of births, and to see my niece doubled over in pain, and it had been 3 hours for her just requesting ibuprofen or Tylenol, and I, as her aunt, just went to the nurse's station and asked, can she please have something for pain? And they said, we're still waiting on that. That never would have happened to me, and that's a fact. And I just want to know, what are you, as our next president, going to do to change this?
Thank you for an excellent question, and for using a very real personal example to illustrate why this is so important, and the disparity in care, even when you get access, which is a challenge, right, in America right now. So we have a maternal mortality crisis. It is 3 times as deadly for women of color. It's not unconnected to the fact that in states like yours and in mine, we have restricted the full spectrum of women's reproductive rights and healthcare. In Texas, we've shut down 1/4 of the family planning clinics, making it hard not just to obtain a safe, legal abortion, but a cervical cancer screening, family planning help. A state that didn't expand Medicaid, you can't see a provider of any kind if you're a woman in some places in Texas right now, and there are mortal consequences to that. But to your point, we know that women of color are treated differently than white women, even when they get care right now. Some of the things that we know that can make up this deficit in care and treatment and outcomes, including beyond universal guaranteed high-quality health care, midwives and doulas and home health care visits, really important, literally a life-saving difference. And then you've got to look at this. The disparity between white infant mortality and black infant mortality today is greater than it was in 1850, 15 years before the abolition of slavery. How in the world can that be? But when you look at just about every institution and dynamic of American life right now, you see those disparities in criminal justice, in the economy, 10 times the wealth in white America than there is in black America. So in addition to better access to care, we have to squarely confront the legacy of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow and racism and suppression that manifest themselves in literally every aspect of American life today. So we've got to take those immediate steps, and then we've got to take that much larger step together as a country. Thanks for making the drive from Topeka. Very grateful. Thank you.
Hey, Beto, thank you for coming. I have a question about student loans. I think a lot of people out here probably have them. I think all of them are feeling the predatory weight of these loans on their shoulders. Unlike every other type of loan in this country, student loans have been uniquely stripped of bankruptcy rights. This is something that founders called for ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise their army, because they themselves were being screwed by the queen. So they took them away uniquely, and also took away statutes of limitations. So these things have become lifelong debt. Slavery instruments, I use that term lightly, probably more heavily than I should. You were great. Many years ago, you co-sponsored legislation that would return standard bankruptcy rights to student loans against people like Ted Cruz, who fought squarely against us. And I'm just hoping that you'll carry that on into the campaign. I'm wondering what you plan on doing.
Yes. So yes, we'll carry that through. We'll also stop digging the hole. So that means your first 2 years of higher education free, earn that associate's degree. You will pay more back into the system than you will have ever received in having your tuition and cost waived for the first 2 years. For your education, debt-free, not just for tuition, but for room, board, and books for lower and middle income students in this country. And then as we mentioned earlier, if you're willing to teach school or work in public education, if you're willing to serve a veteran in one of those 40,000 open positions at the VA right now, then let's move up the public service debt forgiveness program that really gets triggered at about 10 years. Start at day one, real time, forgive those loans. You focus on providing for those kids or taking care of those veterans. Again, whatever the cost is, we more than make up for that by addressing a teacher shortage in this country, a healthcare provider shortage at the VA, and we take you out of mounting debt that is going to crush you. We see about a 10% default rate on the $1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt right now. So I think if we ease that burden and then refinance for those who don't avail themselves of public service at the lowest possible rates, reintroduce bankruptcy protection, and then stop digging the hole, then I think we're going to be a much stronger country for it. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it.
This is going to be our last question, but we're going to stay and say hi to folks.
Cool. Last question, then we get to drink a beer. Yes.
I'm outside the DC area, and my question to you is, I'm a veteran of the Navy, retired after 20 years. And my question to you is, everybody that runs for president, they always say we're going to do this for the veterans, we're going to do that for the veterans. But what are we going to do for the part where the mental health issue come in, and we got all these veterans committing suicide because they can't see a doctor or they can't get their claims and everything processed. So what do we, I know they volunteer to send people out of town to see other doctors because it's the waiting there, but there's a consequence to that also because the VA has to pay for it, and then the VA takes all their pay for it and it leaves it on the minute. So you as president, is that going to be your number one priority, to come in and clean up the VA and make it better for veterans?
So let me answer your question. First of all, we all want to thank you for your service. It continues right now, as you asked about other veterans, so thank you. You asked, how are we going to help veterans? Number one, I'm going to listen to them, and we are going to stop going to war everywhere around the world, end the wars that we're in, bring those service members back home. When they come back, we're going to fully fund the true cost of war. That means, as you alluded to, if you come back with post-traumatic stress disorder, or traumatic brain injury, or military sexual trauma, or any of the signature conditions and wounds of service and combat, we're going to make sure that we spare no expense in connecting you with the care that you need. You're right, about 22 veterans a day, every day, take their own lives in this country. The majority of them were not able to get into the VA to see a provider, or chose not to, perhaps because the lines were too long. We are going to prioritize hiring mental health care providers at the VA. We're going to make reducing veteran suicide our number one clinical priority at the VA, so that we bring that down right away. And then we're going to connect every returning service member, retirees such as yourself, veterans who haven't served the full 20 years, with that college education if they don't yet have it, or that career, so that they do not fall through the cracks. We helped to rewrite the post 9/11 GI Bill to make that earned benefit a forever benefit for everyone who has served this country. As you just said, we can't just tip our hat or pat you on the back and say thanks for your service. We've got to put our money where our mouth is, change the policy, ensure there's accountability at the VA, and then fill those tens of thousands of funded but unfilled positions that we have right now. Only then, when we stop going to these forever wars, end those conflicts, and take care of veterans, will we have met our end of the obligation. So
What is your plan? I served in Iraq twice. So what is your plan to get people out of Afghanistan, because they've been there for almost 20 years?
Yeah.
We're going to spend billions and billions of dollars on it, but we can't get billions and billions of dollars from the VA.
It's a great point. So we've spent like $6 trillion on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq so far, and yet we won't put up that same kind of resource for those veterans who have served. You ask how we're going to end these wars? In Afghanistan, where we have been for 18 years, it means that everyone has a seat at the table in the negotiations. That includes the government in Kabul, but it also includes the Taliban. And it means that those service members, having satisfied the original mission that sent us to Afghanistan in the first place, get those who got us, make sure that it can never be used as a launching pad to attack the United States of America. It is time for them to come home. We will diplomatically do everything we can to make sure that there's a representative government in Kabul, but we can also understand that it is not up to the United States of America to decide the form of government for any other country on the face of the planet. So bring that same kind of thinking to Iraq, to Syria, to Somalia, to Yemen, to Libya, all the places that we're at war tonight. It means sometimes not just working with our friends, but working with our enemies to peacefully and diplomatically resolve these problems. And then we use war as the option of last resort only. If we're going to put your life, or any American's life on the line, we're going to make sure that that was the last possible option we had before we do that, because the cost is so great. Thank you for asking, and thank you for serving. Appreciate it. Okay, Sioux City, thank you for having us out. Diving Elk, beautiful beer. Thank you very much. Gracias. We'll see you all. Adios.